Good evening to those bored enough to watch. In a previous video, I discussed Chronology, in which I thought was a short but engaging game that immersed the player into its world, creating puzzles that were fun and mechanically interesting, all while telling a once again short but captivating and intriguing story about redemption and fixing the past. In that video, I mentioned another game in which I also played and had a fun time with, and that is the subject of today's video, Back to Bed. This is once again another short game, but it's also a really great game that once again engages the player to think out the situations presented within. For those who watched my Figment video, you would know that this game inspired the visual scene within that game. And for me, going back to see the game that, in a way, was the catalyst for Figment's art direction was an interesting and fun experience. I think that Back to Bed is a great game, and in this video, I want to talk about it. So, with that said, let's discuss Back to Bed. According to various sources which I'll leave linked in the description, narcolepsy is a rare, long-term brain condition in which results in it being unable to control waking and sleeping patterns normally, thus resulting in an excessive amount of daytime sleepiness, or falling asleep unexpectedly without warning. I bring this up now because this is the condition that Bob, the character we'll be somewhat controlling throughout this game, has. This game is set in his dreams, but we're to prevent him from awaking by guiding him back to his bed. We play as what is seemingly his subconscious guardian, taking the sleeping Bob back to his bed. We start with level 1, which is basically the tutorial level for how to move and pick objects up as well as place them down. Level 2 is an expansion of this, showing how the direction that Bob moves in is affected by what's in front of him. After completing those two levels, we essentially know everything we need to in order to complete the rest of the stages. I like that about this game. It's easy and simple to understand and allows for you to jump right into the experience without needing to understand complex mechanics. I'm not saying that having such mechanics in a game is a bad thing, but I think that this game shows that you don't need to have as such in order to create a compelling experience that encourages you as the player to quickly think the situations through in order to complete the level. With that though, after completing a few more levels, we reach a cutscene, showing how the subconscious guardian frantically moves things around in order to guide Bob safely back to bed, all while catching stares from the world around them. I think that this is perhaps the game's way of showing that the world around Bob may think that he's odd due to his narcolepsy without understanding the condition and what it does to a person's sleep pattern. This could be supported through a lot of the illustrations in the game's cutscenes showing a multitude of eyes looking at Bob as he traverses through the dream in his sleep. Maybe this is me reading too much into things, but I like the way that this game is subtle with its imagery and themes, though I'll come back to this later. With that aside, after completing a few levels, we'll then need to begin navigating these clocks here away from Bob while he traverses through the area. Should one make contact with him, he'll awake and thus cause you to need to restart. Though, that aside, after completing a few more levels, we reach another cutscene of the game, showing the subconscious guardian guiding Bob away from the clocks, running from time as it leads him to supposed safety. With that, we begin the next section of the game, Harbour Hazards. This is the second section of the game, in which introduces a lot more obstacles such as railroads and much more. The difficulty of the levels increases a lot with this latter half of the game, as there's much more you need to keep in mind throughout. For example, you need to be keeping a consistent eye on Bob's position in some of these stages to ensure he doesn't wander onto the tracks, as if he does, you then need to restart the stage again. Certain items such as these lips here that blow air push Bob into a certain direction. They can be blocked through placing an apple in front of it, or they can be used to your advantage to progress through a stage. Either way, we complete a few more levels and reach another cutscene, showing tracks coming from nowhere, but the game describing it as leading straight to death. I think that the game could be referring to the outside world here. The streets and the cars of the outside world can cause someone to easily meet their demise, whether they accidentally walk into a moving vehicle's trajectory should they not be paying attention, or being unattentive when in front of the wheel. Either way, this causes the aforementioned tracks to become more of an obstacle during gameplay, thus throwing you into the next few stages of the game. Here is when things gradually begin to turn more difficult, as obstacles such as dogs are introduced which will cause you to have to restart should they come into contact with Bob. Thus, the solution here would be to move them as far as possible away from him so that such a risk is entirely eliminated. Especially as you progress further, you'll see that trying to complete a stage with them roaming around is near impossible. Additionally, the levels get more complex, with more moving parts to trying to complete one as there's more items distributed throughout that you need to get. Though I must add, while I do say that the stages get more complex, I do want to say that the game doesn't execute this in a way which makes the stages obnoxious and annoying to play through. It's actually done really well, and if anything makes them more fun to indulge in and think the situations out in. Though with that, after you complete the stage, we enter a cutscene in which we find ourselves cornered with Bob, but as he awakes from his bad dream, he's ready to begin a new day, allowing for us to go back into a subconscious awaiting another time, thus ending Back to Bed. I really liked this game. I think it does a lot of things well, and while it's a short game, it's once again a really fun and enjoyable one to play through. Though with that, I want to discuss some of the extras. After completing the main game, you have the option to enter the nightmare mode of the game, in which is a more difficult version of the main game. As opposed to just needing to guide Bob to the bed, you need to guide him to the keys to open the door to the bed before doing so, in which requires more thought and consideration into your movements. Guiding him to the key, letting him fall and then to the bed doesn't work due to the fact that the key also respawns in its original position whenever Bob does, and thus you need to be able to do so in a single run. I played a bit of this mode but didn't finish it, but it's definitely there for those who want more content after completing the main game, and I appreciate this mode's inclusion into the game. I think that this game is short, but it certainly is a really enjoyable experience to indulge in. The stages are all really fun to play through and really encourage the player to engage in its mechanics and level design. The game only took me 1 to 2 hours to beat, similar to that of Chronology, but they were certainly a really fun 2 hours. Furthermore, I want to compliment this game's cutscenes and the visuals within them. It's easy to see where Figment drew its inspiration, as these cutscenes are filled with detail, and it's clear that a lot of effort went into making them so detailed, and it's something that I really appreciate. I think that it was interesting to play the game that was the catalyst to Figment, and it was certainly really fun. While this game may not have as much of a story, I really like the themes depicted within, the way in which it blends real life objects and turns them against you in the gameplay, as well as their depiction in the cutscenes and their deeper meaning to the game's theme. Though, with that, I want to conclude things. I really like this game. As with Chronology, it's a very short but entertaining one to play through. The puzzles were short but enjoyable, and I really had a fun time with this game. As mentioned, I think it's interesting to see where Figment originated from, but I don't think that this game should be subjected to being known as just something that catalyzed that game's creation. On its own, it stands tall. While having that hindsight is nice knowledge, and it's certainly an interesting journey to see where Figment drew its inspiration, I think that Back to Bed is more than that. It inspired Figment's art style for a reason, and that's because it's a great game. And so with that, I can say that I would greatly recommend Back to Bed. So, there's the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Once again, another short video. I apologize to whoever that may disappoint. More videos are currently being worked on, and I hope they don't disappoint whoever may watch them. If you want to view the list of games I want to make videos about in the future, you can always do so with the link in the description. Furthermore, if you want to follow me, then my socials will be linked in the description, as well as any afterthoughts or messages I may want to add. With that, I haven't really got much else I want to say, so I'll see you all in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.